Hey guys, tonight you find yourself walking home through a medieval village just as the last grey light slips behind the fields. Cold stone walls sweat with damp. Straw lies dark beneath dripping eaves, and smoke gathers under soot-black rafters before curling reluctantly into the evening air. Mud clings to your boots with the loyalty of a small but determined dog. Somewhere beyond the houses, monastery bells sound through river mist, slow and hollow, while a horse breathes white clouds beside a timber fence and torchlight trembles near the manor gate. Medieval travel brochures really oversold this experience. Your fur-lined cloak is wet at the shoulders, your fingers are stiff, and the road has been generous enough to leave half the countryside attached to your heels. You probably would not last a week out here without learning quickly which puddles are shallow, which dogs bite, and which neighbours consider your woodpile a community resource. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you feel like it, leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You keep walking. The lane narrows between timber-framed houses whose upper stories lean toward one another as though sharing gossip above your head. Water drips from thatch. A hen makes one final, offended noise before disappearing beneath a cart. Evening is closing over the village, and people are turning inward. Your own house waits near the edge of the lane, modest enough that a visiting noble might mistake it for a storage shed. But to you it is the centre of the known world. Its oak door is dark with years of hands, smoke, rain, and grease. An iron key hangs beneath your cloak from a cord at your belt. Iron, some swear, discourages ill luck as effectively as thieves, though no one can quite agree whether spirits fear iron or merely dislike bad smithing. Before you reach the threshold, the dog appears. He is not entirely your dog. This distinction matters mostly to you. He began following you from the market after discovering that you sometimes drop crusts of bread. Since then, he has decided your household belongs to him. He shakes rain onto your leggings and looks pleased with his contribution. You lift the wooden latch. Warmth reaches you first, then smoke. Inside, the main room glows amber around the hearth. Your spouse is already there, bent near the fire, shifting a split log with iron tongs. The room smells of damp wool, ash, onions, yesterday's ale, and rushes scattered over the packed floor. You duck beneath the lintel and close the oak door quickly, because warmth is expensive even when nobody writes its price down. Your cloak comes off with a wet sigh. You hang it from a peg near the hearth, but not too near. Everyone knows someone who once hung wool beside a flame and spent the next minute performing a very energetic household dance with a bucket. Your spouse glances toward your boots. You glance toward the rushes. There is a silent negotiation. You lose. So you crouch near the threshold and scrape away the worst of the mud with a flat piece of wood kept there for exactly this purpose. The dog watches without offering assistance. Roads collect everything: horse dung, spilled grain, straw, rainwater, and occasionally a lost pilgrim badge stamped with the saint's image. Above the hearth hangs a small wooden cross darkened by smoke. Beside it is a scrap of faded cloth tied around a nail. Your spouse's mother says it once touched a saint's shrine on pilgrimage. Your neighbour says it probably touched a merchant's cart. Even now, it is hard to tell whether such objects protect a household through holiness, habit, or the comfort of believing that someone watches over the door. You warm your hands. Heat returns to your fingers in prickling waves. Behind you, rain ticks softly against the shutter. The bell you heard on the road fades, leaving only the crack of firewood and the settling groan of timber. The house is not silent. A pot hangs from an iron hook. A wooden spoon rests on a board, somewhere near the wall. A mouse makes a confident decision concerning a grain sack. The dog raises one ear, then decides the defence of the household can wait until morning. A small beeswax candle stands in a clay holder beside the wall, its wick blackened from earlier use. It is too precious to burn carelessly, so most evenings the hearth or a cheaper rushlight does the work. Beeswax belongs to prayers, careful mending, feast days, or any task where you would rather not sew your sleeve to your spouse's stocking. Outside, footsteps pass through the mud. A cartwheel complains along the lane with a familiar squeal. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether its owner repaired it badly or simply believes prayer is a form of carpentry. You move deeper into the room. Your spouse shifts, making space beside the hearth without ceremony. That small movement is the true beginning of the evening. You sit on a low stool and extend your boots toward the warmth while the dog circles twice and settles across the threshold like a badly woven rug. Beyond the shutter, the village disappears into mist. The church tower, muddy track, horse breath, and distant manor roof all fade into darkness. But you are inside. The oak door is shut. Your cloak drips quietly. Your hands are warm enough to move again. Firelight softens your spouse's face, and for a little while neither of you needs to say anything. The evening has finally found you. The warmth in your fingers returns slowly, and with it comes the knowledge that sitting still is a luxury the household cannot quite afford yet. Your spouse nudges the hanging pot with the iron hook above the hearth, judging the heat by habit rather than measurement. There is no clock on the wall, no neat row of numbered dials, only bells in the distance, the colour of the sky beyond the shutter, and the condition of the fire. The monastery bell has already marked the evening hour, and soon darkness will be complete. You rise from the stool. The dog does not. A wooden bucket stands near the door, half full of water brought earlier from the village well. You lift it by its curved handle and feel how cold the iron fittings have become. Water is never something to waste. Every cup has been hauled by hand, carried through mud, guarded from careless feet, and occasionally inspected with suspicion when a leaf or insect floats on top. Your spouse dips a wooden ladle into the bucket and pours a little into the cooking pot. Steam rises. Inside, chopped onions, peas, barley, and bits of cabbage have been simmering together since before sunset. Pottage changes with the season and the household purse. On better evenings, there may be bacon fat, salted meat, or herbs from the garden. On leaner ones, it is mostly grain, vegetables, and confidence. Tonight, a small piece of smoked fish waits on a board beside the hearth. It is not much, but it gives the room a richer smell. You take up the fire tongs and push one glowing piece of wood beneath the pot. Sparks lift briefly toward the rafters, where generations of smoke have painted the beams almost black. Fire is comfort. Kitchen, lamp, heater, and constant danger gathered into one useful orange thing. Some households cover their embers carefully at night with ash so they can coax them back to life in the morning. A dead hearth means begging fire from a neighbour or struggling with tinder, flint, and patience before breakfast. Some swear that carrying a live coal from another house can carry that family's luck with it. No one can quite agree whether that means good luck or bad. You decide not to test the matter. Your spouse points toward a bundle of dried herbs hanging from a beam. You untie a few leaves and crush them between your fingers before dropping them into the pot. Sage, perhaps, or parsley dried from warmer months. The smell sharpens in the steam. Near the wall stands a small chest with an iron clasp. It holds salt, precious spices when you can afford them, spare cloth, and certain objects that deserve protection from mice, damp, and neighbours with unusually broad definitions of borrowing. You kneel and open it. The iron key turns with a stubborn scrape. Inside, wrapped in linen, is a little cone of salt. Salt is valuable enough to use carefully. You pinch some between finger and thumb, then hesitate. Your spouse gives you a look. You return half of it. Marriage, you have learned, includes many forms of negotiation. Salt is apparently one of them. The pottage receives its modest seasoning. Across the room, the rushes on the floor shift beneath your boots. Fresh rushes are laid down when possible, sometimes mixed with sweet-smelling herbs, though older layers may remain longer than anyone wants to discuss. A well-kept household smells of wood smoke, food, wool, and herbs. A less well-kept one develops additional ambitions. Your spouse picks up a rushlight from beside the hearth. It is simple, a dried rush peeled to expose its pith and dipped in fat, cheap, practical, and brief. You hold one end toward the flame until it catches, then set it carefully in its holder. Its light is thin but useful. Beeswax candles burn cleaner and brighter, but they are expensive. Tallow candles are cheaper, though they can smell unpleasant and may attract hungry animals. The rushlight is humbler still, but for a household like yours, humility is often another word for sensible. You move to the table. It is a heavy plank set on supports, scarred by knives and years of use. You wipe it with a damp cloth, then place 2 wooden bowls near the edge. A small loaf of coarse bread rests beneath linen beside them. Your spouse turns the bread over and presses it lightly. Still good, or good enough. In winter, households rely on what has been stored, dried, smoked, salted, pickled, or protected since harvest. The winter storehouse matters almost as much as the hearth. Grain must remain dry. Apples are checked for rot. Beans and peas are kept from mice. Salted meat hangs where it can survive both damp and human temptation. One spoiled sack can turn an ordinary winter into a hard one. You glance toward the corner where your own sacks stand. So does the dog. His interest is not reassuring. You clap once. He looks offended but moves away. Outside, a gust pushes rain against the shutter. Somewhere down the lane, someone calls an animal into shelter. Hooves strike wet earth, then fade. Your spouse lifts the pot lid with a folded cloth. The room fills with steam. You lean closer, breathing in barley, onion, herbs, and smoke. A thin layer has caught slightly at the bottom. You both pretend not to notice. Medieval cooking has many flavours, and one of them is always near the fire. You take the long wooden spoon and stir slowly, scraping the bottom before disaster becomes supper. On a peg nearby hangs a small bunch of dried rowan twigs tied with red thread. Your spouse's grandmother insisted that rowan protects a home from harmful spirits, especially when placed near doors or hearths. Priests may frown at such habits, but households rarely abandon old protections merely because a sermon tells them to. Some swear that a house needs both a cross and a charm because saints are busy. You suspect saints might object to the explanation. The room grows darker beyond the firelight. You bring the smoked fish closer, break it carefully, and remove the tougher bones. Your spouse slices the coarse loaf. Neither of you hurries. There is a rhythm to these small tasks. Lift, stir, cut, wait, listen. Outside, The village settles one door at a time, inside. The rushlight burns steadily, the pot thickens, and the wet cloak near the hearth finally stops dripping. Your spouse sets the bowls in place. You take the pot from its hook together, careful of the heat. The evening has moved from cold road to warm room, from wet boots to quiet preparation, and now, at last, supper is ready. You carry the pot only a few steps, but both of you treat those steps with care. The iron handle is hot even through folded cloth. The floor rushes shift beneath your boots, and the dog has chosen this precise moment to rise and investigate everything. You guide him away with one knee before setting the pot beside the table. He looks betrayed. This is apparently his supper too. Your spouse ladles the pottage into 2 wooden bowls. Steam curls upward into the smoky room, carrying the smell of barley, cabbage, onion, sage, and that faint toasted scent from the bottom of the pot which you've both agreed not to call burning. You sit opposite one another. There is no elaborate ceremony, no silver plate, no servants carrying roasted peacocks beneath banners. No musician playing softly in the corner while someone announces the second course. There is simply the table, the fire, 2 bowls, a loaf of coarse bread, a little smoked fish, and the comfortable knowledge that the door is closed against the rain. You tear the bread rather than cut it. The crust is hard enough to require effort, but the inside remains dense and filling. In wealthier halls, thick slices of older bread may be used as trenchers beneath meat and sauces, absorbing grease before being eaten, given to servants, or sometimes distributed to the poor. Here, bread has fewer theatrical responsibilities. It mostly needs to keep you alive. You dip a piece into the pottage. It softens immediately. Your spouse does the same. For a while, neither of you speaks. This is not an unhappy silence. Medieval households are full of silence that comes from tired bodies rather than wounded feelings. You have both spent the day using your hands, carrying, scraping, lifting, counting, bargaining, sweeping, repairing, and enduring weather that seems personally offended by human existence. Now there is only eating. The wooden spoon is broad and slightly rough at the handle. You scoop slowly, blowing across each mouthful. The barley is swollen thick. The peas have nearly disappeared into the broth. A shred of smoked fish gives the next spoonful a salty richness. You take a drink of ale from a shared cup. Ale is safer and more familiar than suspicious standing water in many places, though no one spends the evening performing complicated calculations about purity. You drink it because it is there, because it contains nourishment, and because a cool swallow after hot pottage feels good. Your spouse reaches for the salt. Again, only a pinch. Salt spilled carelessly can provoke concern. Some people believe it invites misfortune, though customs differ from village to village. Others toss a little over the shoulder after a spill, while some simply complain about the waste, which is perhaps the most believable medieval reaction of all. You keep your elbow well away from the salt. The dog sits beneath the table. He watches your hand. You move your hand. His head moves with it. You break off the smallest corner of bread and let it fall. His jaws close before the piece touches the rushes. Your spouse notices. You suddenly become fascinated by your bowl. Marriage teaches many useful arts, including how to look innocent while feeding an animal that has already eaten. Outside, another bell sounds. Its note arrives softened by damp air, spreading from the monastery beyond the fields. Bells divide the day into recognizable pieces: prayer, work, rest, warning, feast, death, celebration. Even people who cannot see the monastery tower know where they stand in the evening by its voice. You pause with the cup in your hand. The sound fades. The fire answers with a low crack. Your spouse breaks the smoked fish into smaller portions. There are bones to watch for, thin and sharp. You eat carefully. Medieval meals may be simple, but they still demand attention. Teeth are too valuable to challenge recklessly, especially when the village healer's solution to dental pain might involve herbs, prayer, a hot iron, or the confident use of pliers. Some swear that toothache can be eased by carrying certain charms or touching a troublesome tooth with a nail before driving that nail into wood. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the nail is meant to imprison the pain or simply give you something else to worry about. You decide bread is safer. Your spouse wipes the rim of the shared cup with a thumb before drinking. Table manners exist even in modest households. You do not reach greedily across another person. You avoid putting dirty fingers into shared dishes when spoons are available. You do not blow your nose into the table linen if there happens to be any. A low bar, perhaps. Still, civilization has to begin somewhere. You scrape the bottom of your bowl with bread. Nothing is wasted if it can reasonably be eaten. Fat is saved. Bones may flavour another broth. Stale bread becomes useful in other dishes. Vegetable scraps may go to animals. Even ashes from the hearth can find another purpose in cleaning or household work. The medieval home survives by asking the same question of almost everything: can this be used again? You look around. The answer is usually yes. The rushes underfoot may later be changed. The clay pot is patched rather than discarded if possible. Wool is mended until the original cloth seems almost theoretical. Iron tools pass from hand to hand for years. Your spoon itself has a darker patch where the wood split once and was bound. The bowl has a shallow crack. The table bears cuts from people who sat here before you. A household is partly a collection of objects refusing to die. Your spouse reaches for the final piece of bread and stops. You stop too. Both of you look at it. A marriage can survive bad harvests, freezing rain, demanding landlords, and relatives who arrive without warning. The last piece of bread is another test entirely. Your spouse breaks it in half. Peace is restored. You eat slowly. The rain has weakened now. Water still drips from the eaves, but the hard tapping against the shutter has softened to an occasional patter. The dog lies down again, satisfied with his criminal success. You take the last swallow of ale. Across the table, your spouse rubs tired fingers together near the warmth of the bowl. Firelight moves over familiar hands, roughened by work, nicked by tools, reddened by cold. There is tenderness in noticing such small things. No grand declaration is required. You simply slide the warmer side of the bread toward your spouse. The meal dwindles. The pottage pot is nearly empty. Only a little thick mixture clings to its sides. One small portion will be saved if possible. Tomorrow it may be reheated, stretched with water or grain, and transformed into something that everyone politely pretends is new. Those who tell tales of medieval feasts rarely linger over yesterday's pottage. Your household does, because this is where most evenings truly live. Not beneath chandeliers, not among jewelled cups, but around a scarred wooden table beside a smoky hearth, sharing bread while bells fade over wet fields. You set down your spoon. Your spouse does the same. For one quiet moment, supper is finished, yet neither of you rises. The fire settles lower. The half-burned rushlight flickers beside the wall, and the comfortable silence remains between you, warm as the last steam rising from the bowls. For another moment, neither of you moves. The bowls sit empty between your hands. The rushlight burns lower beside the wall, and the last warmth of supper lingers in the room. Then your spouse reaches for the wooden pot, and the evening quietly resumes its work. You rise from the bench. Nothing remains on the table simply because the eating is finished. You gather the 2 bowls first, stacking them carefully so the cracked rim of yours does not catch against the other. Wooden vessels survive through caution. A careless drop means another repair, another expense, another small inconvenience in a life already crowded with them. The spoon goes beside the bowls. The shared cup follows. Only crumbs remain on the tabletop. You brush them together with the side of your hand rather than scattering them into the rushes. Bread is too valuable for casual waste. A few crumbs go into your palm, and the dog immediately wakes from what was clearly a fraudulent sleep. He stares at you. You stare at him. Your spouse stares at both of you. You put the crumbs into a small wooden bowl instead. The dog sighs with such tragedy that he could have been dispossessed of an ancestral estate. Some crumbs may be given to chickens in the morning. Others might disappear into tomorrow's cooking. Even crumbs have a future here. Your spouse carries the pot back toward the hearth while you take the bowls to the water bucket. There is no sink. No convenient stream of water appears because you would like one. You pour only a little water into a shallow basin, enough to loosen what remains of the pottage. The water is cold, and your fingers feel it immediately. You rub the inside of the first bowl with a scrap of cloth. Wood absorbs smells and grease, so cleaning is practical rather than perfect. Hot water would help, but heating water requires fuel, and fuel requires labor. Every comfort has a chain of effort behind it. Sometimes sand, ash, herbs, or rough cloth may be used for scrubbing, depending on what is being cleaned. Ash from the hearth can be surprisingly useful around a household, though you learn quickly that there is a difference between cleaning with ash and simply making everything grey. You rinse the spoon next. Your spouse has already scraped the remaining pottage from the cooking pot into a smaller vessel. There is enough for another meal. Not a full one, but enough. Tomorrow, water may be added, perhaps another handful of barley, perhaps onion if there is one worth cutting. A meal stretches because the household must stretch with it. You cover the little vessel with cloth. Then you find a place for it near the cooler wall rather than beside the hearth. Spoilage is a constant enemy. So are mice. You glance toward the grain sacks. Nothing moves. That means very little. Mice possess patience. They also possess a dangerous confidence around people who think they have defeated them. Many households suspend food from beams, store grain in chests, use lidded pots, or keep cats specifically because grain without protection becomes mouse property with remarkable speed. Your household has no cat tonight. It has the dog. He is currently licking the floor where a crumb may once have existed. You decide the grain deserves stronger defences. The bread goes back beneath its cloth, then into a wooden box with a fitted lid. The remaining smoked fish is wrapped carefully. Salt returns to the small chest with the iron clasp. Your spouse locks it. The sound is tiny but satisfying. Iron keys are among the most reassuring objects in a medieval household. They guard food, cloth, coin, tools, and sometimes written documents. A key worn at the belt can represent responsibility as much as security, especially in households where the person who manages stores controls much of daily survival. Some people attach meaning to keys beyond their practical use. A key placed beneath a pillow may, according to certain traditions, protect a sleeper or reveal something in dreams. Others believe iron itself can repel troublesome spirits. No one can quite agree whether a spirit can be defeated by household hardware. You suspect the spirit would at least find the arrangement inconvenient. The table needs wiping. You dampen the cloth again and work across the scarred planks. Grease darkens the wood. Knife marks catch beneath your fingers. There are old stains that belong to meals so distant neither of you remembers them. The table has absorbed years of bread, ale, pottage, wax, salt, and elbows. You wipe around a shallow cut near the edge. Your spouse made that cut last winter while slicing turnips with cold hands. You remember the sound of the knife slipping. You remember the silence afterward. You remember that nothing serious happened. Small memories live inside furniture. When the tabletop is reasonably clean, you wring the cloth over the basin. The water is cloudy now. It will not simply be thrown wherever you please. Dirty water may be taken outside and emptied away from the clean water supply, depending on the layout of the village and whatever habits the household has inherited. Medieval sanitation is not always as chaotic as later stories suggest, but neither is it pleasant enough to inspire poetry. You carry the basin toward the door. Cold air creeps around the edges of the oak planks. Your spouse lifts the latch. You step just outside. The rain has stopped. The lane shines under thin moonlight, and the village has become a collection of dark roofs and tiny amber windows. Somewhere farther away, water drips steadily into a ditch. You empty the basin near the edge of the yard. Not into the path. You have standards. Low standards, perhaps, but standards. When you turn back, a pale shape near the threshold catches your eye. For one instant it looks like a scrap of cloth. Then you see it is only a little bundle of dried herbs tied beneath the door peg. Your spouse placed it there several days ago. Rue and perhaps rosemary. Some swear such herbs keep sickness from crossing a threshold. Others say their sharp scent discourages insects and bad air. Even now, it is hard to tell whether old household customs survive because people believe in them completely, or because nobody wishes to be the first person to remove the charm and discover it was working. You leave it where it is. Inside again, you bar the door behind you. The table is clear now. The bowls stand upside down near the hearth to dry. The spoon rests beside them. The little portion of pottage waits safely against tomorrow. The bread is covered. The salt is locked away. The dog has found nothing else to steal. For perhaps 30 seconds, the household has achieved perfect order. Then you notice a loose thread hanging from your sleeve. Your spouse notices a split in the leather strap of a work shoe. On the bench lies a bundle of wool that still needs attention. The evening's not finished. It has only changed its kind of work. You sit again beside the hearth, and your spouse draws the mending basket closer into the firelight. You pull the mending basket closer to the hearth. Its wicker sides are worn smooth from years of handling, and several loose fibres curl outward where the weave has begun to split. Inside lie scraps of wool, a few bone needles, lengths of thread, a small lump of beeswax for smoothing it, and pieces of leather too useful to discard. Your spouse places the damaged shoe across one knee. You examine the loose thread at your sleeve. The fire settles into a steady orange glow while the household enters that long stretch of evening when supper is finished but sleep is still some distance away. Work continues. It simply becomes quieter. You choose a length of wool thread and run it lightly across the beeswax. Wax stiffens the fibres and makes them easier to guide through cloth. The needle is small, polished, and slightly uneven. Good needles are valuable enough to keep carefully, especially when metal ones are difficult to replace. You hold your sleeve toward the firelight. The tear is not large. That is fortunate because your skill is respectable rather than miraculous. Your spouse glances at the first stitch, then at you. You pretend not to notice. Across from you, the leather shoe receives more confident attention. Your spouse uses an awl to reopen an old hole, then threads a narrow leather thong through the softened edge. Shoes are repaired repeatedly when possible. Soles can be patched. Seams can be restitched. Leather can be greased to resist damp. Nothing fashionable about it. Very little in the household is allowed to retire simply because it is tired. You push the needle through wool. The fabric resists, then gives. Another stitch follows. The room becomes filled with tiny sounds, thread pulling through cloth, leather creaking, the scratch of an awl, the soft collapse of burning wood. Near the wall waits a bundle of raw wool that still needs carding before it can be spun. Two wooden cards fitted with rows of teeth lie beside it. In some homes, wool work fills countless evening hours, especially through colder months when outside labour ends sooner. You finish the sleeve repair and hold it up. The stitches are uneven. They are also holding. That qualifies as victory. Your spouse does not laugh. This is kindness or exhaustion. No one can quite agree whether married harmony depends more on affection or knowing when not to comment on someone's sewing. You return the needle to the basket. Next comes a torn wool stocking. It has already been darned twice, and the newest hole appears beside an older patch. You stretch the fabric over your hand and begin again. A sock in this house does not die. It gradually becomes an archive. Nearby, your spouse finishes the shoe and reaches for a wooden spoon whose handle has split. A narrow strip of linen is wound tightly around the crack, then rubbed with a little wax. Tomorrow the repair may fail. Tonight it looks convincing. That is enough. A wooden cup with a loose stave waits beside it. A belt buckle needs tightening. One hinge on the chest squeaks. The mending basket seems to reproduce tasks whenever nobody is watching. You begin to suspect it may be enchanted. Medieval households do not separate labour neatly into work hours and leisure hours. Evening work continues beside the hearth because light, warmth, and company gather here. Spinning, sewing, carving, repairing harness, sharpening tools, sorting beans, twisting cords, and patching clothing can all occupy these quieter hours. Your spouse reaches for the wool bundle. You take the cards. Together you work small portions of fleece between the wooden teeth, pulling and straightening the fibres until they lie more evenly. Tiny bits of grass and dirt fall out onto the floor. The dog raises his head when one tuft drifts near his nose. He sniffs it, then sneezes. He seems personally offended by sheep. You set the cleaner wool aside in a soft roll. Another handful follows. The repetitive motion becomes almost hypnotic. Pull, separate, turn, pull again. There is comfort in work that requires hands but not much conversation. Outside, wind moves softly around the shutter. The village beyond the wall has become nearly silent. You think briefly of the market earlier in the day, bolts of cloth hanging beneath awnings, baskets of onions, iron tools laid out on boards, a merchant arguing over a toll, a pilgrim showing off a lead badge stamped with the image of a saint. Many small household objects begin in places like that. Others are made at home. Cord may be twisted from flax or hemp. Wooden pegs are carved from scraps. Broken baskets are rewoven. Old cloth becomes patches, wrapping, cleaning rags, or stuffing. Waste is expensive. Patience is cheaper. Your spouse reaches for a small distaff leaning against the wall. A twist of prepared wool is secured near the top, ready for spinning another time. Certain customs surround spinning itself. Some communities treat particular feast days as unsuitable for women to spin, especially around holy observances, while old stories warn that supernatural women may punish anyone working at forbidden times. Some swear that spinning on the wrong night invites bad luck. Others probably discovered that calling a holiday sacred was the only reliable way to make everyone put down the spindle. You are sympathetic to both explanations. You glance toward the wooden cross above the hearth. Tonight is ordinary enough, so work continues. Your fingers ache slightly now. You flex them near the warmth. The repaired stocking joins the finished sleeve. Your spouse tests the shoe strap by pulling hard against it. It holds. The spoon handle survives its inspection too. One by one, small problems disappear from the room. Not permanently. Nothing here is permanent, but long enough. The rushlight has burned shorter, and its flame bends whenever a draught slips through the shutters. Your spouse lights the precious half-burned beeswax candle for a few moments so you can finish one finer stitch near the cuff. Its light is clearer and steadier. Suddenly every flaw in your repair becomes visible. You decide rushlights were kinder. A final knot. A bite of the thread. Done. You rub the beeswax between your fingers, then return it carefully to the basket. Your spouse folds the repaired leather strap. The wool cards go back against the wall. The house feels subtly more prepared than it did an hour ago. A sleeve will last longer. A shoe will survive another muddy road. A spoon may reach another winter. Nothing heroic has happened. No herald records it. No monk illuminates a manuscript showing you triumphantly repairing a stocking beneath a cloud of gold leaf. Yet this is how a household continues, stitch by stitch, patch by patch, one small problem dealt with before it becomes a larger one. You lean back on the bench and look toward the little iron-bound chest. There are still coins inside it. Not many, and tomorrow has needs of its own. Your spouse follows your glance. Without saying anything, the mending basket is pushed aside. The chest key comes out again. The iron-bound chest sits between you and the hearth. Your spouse kneels beside it, turns the key, and lifts the lid carefully. Inside are folded scraps of linen, a small leather purse, 2 waxed cords, a few household papers, and several coins that seem much less impressive once they are spread across the table. You move the half-burned beeswax candle closer. Its light pools over the wood. Silver catches it first. Copper follows. The coins are not all identical. Some have worn faces, clipped edges, or markings rubbed faint by years of passing through market stalls, toll gates, alehouses, manor offices, and anxious hands. You turn one beneath your thumb. Money travels. Perhaps this coin once paid for a pilgrim's supper. Perhaps it crossed a bridge as a toll. Perhaps a merchant carried it from a town several days away. No one can quite agree whether old coins bring luck when kept too long, though some swear a coin received on a holy day should never be spent carelessly. You have no such luxury. Every coin on the table already has several jobs waiting for it. Your spouse begins sorting them into tiny groups. Rent, grain, salt, market purchases, church offering, possible repairs. Possible is a dangerous category. Possible can consume everything. You lean closer. The manor rent is the least flexible demand. Land, cottage rights, grazing privileges, and customary obligations are tangled together in ways that make household accounts feel less like arithmetic and more like weather. You know the amount due, more or less. You also know there may be labour owed at certain times depending on local custom. A manor court can settle disputes, record transfers, punish breaches of custom, and remind everyone that a lord's rights remain remarkably memorable. Your spouse taps 2 coins together. You count again. Then once more. The number refuses to improve. You suspect this is a flaw in medieval mathematics. The dog comes over and places his chin on your knee. He contributes nothing financially. You rub one ear anyway. A small scrap of parchment lies inside the chest, marked with a few signs made by a local clerk. Neither of you needs to read every word to understand its importance. A rent account, debt note, or tally can matter greatly even in a household where literacy is limited. Sometimes notches on wooden tally sticks record debts or payments. Split tallies can be kept by 2 parties, their matching cuts serving as proof. A simple piece of wood can remember money more faithfully than a neighbour. This is useful because neighbours occasionally develop very imaginative memories. Your spouse points toward the grain portion. Winter is still some distance away, but winter begins long before snow. A household that waits for frost before thinking about stores has already made a mistake. You consider what remains in the sacks. Barley, some oats, dried peas, a modest amount of flour, apples stored carefully away from bruised ones, salted food, a little smoked fish. There should be more. There is never quite enough to make winter feel polite. Next comes the market. You picture the square in daylight, merchants shouting beneath striped awnings, chickens in wicker cages, onions piled in baskets, wool hanging from wooden rails, iron nails arranged like treasure, and officials collecting market tolls. Every journey into that square seems to cost money before you even buy anything. A toll for entering, a fee for selling, a price for weighing, a price for measuring. Some towns are strict about official weights and measures because merchants have an ancient and apparently universal talent for discovering creative definitions of a full bushel. Your spouse wants another iron cooking hook before winter. You want leather for repairing one boot. The roof needs attention too. You both look upward. The rafters remain silent. That is suspicious. A drip appeared near the wall during the last heavy rain. You moved a bowl beneath it and pretended the matter was solved. It was not solved. It was relocated. You push one coin toward repairs. Your spouse pushes it toward grain. You slide it back. The coin travels between you twice. Finally it sits in the middle, belonging to neither future. Marriage negotiations have become remarkably formal. The candle burns lower. You add another item to the mentalist wax. Then immediately remove it. Rushlights are cheaper. The bees can keep their luxury. Your spouse opens a smaller cloth packet from the chest. Inside are a few dried herbs purchased from a market woman several weeks ago. One is meant for coughs. Another for stomach discomfort. A third is there because the woman swore it protects against fever when hung near the bed. You're not entirely sure which is which. Even now, it's hard to tell whether many household remedies work because of the herb, the prayer spoken over it, or the fact that resting beside a warm hearth helps more than anyone admits. You decide not to budget for additional mystery plants unless someone becomes ill. Then comes debt. You owe a small amount to the smith. Not much. Still enough. The broken hinge last month required new iron, and iron never seems expensive until something essential breaks. Your spouse places a coin aside. The smith's portion looks painfully large. You remember his expression when you promised payment after market day. A man who works beside fire all day develops an impressive ability to look disappointed without saying anything. You will pay him, mostly because you need him again. The church offering remains. A tiny coin is placed near the edge of the table. There are also occasional candles for saints, feast day expenses, gifts when kin marry, contributions when neighbours suffer misfortune, and the endless small obligations that bind a village together. Nobody survives entirely alone. That makes generosity necessary. It also makes budgets extremely inconvenient. Some households keep a special coin hidden for emergencies, perhaps sewn into clothing or concealed inside a chest lining. Some swear that the first coin earned in a new year should be kept untouched to ensure prosperity. You consider trying this next year. Your spouse raises an eyebrow. Apparently prosperity must wait. At last the little piles are finished. None looks generous, yet none is empty. That matters. You gather the coins carefully and return them to the leather purse. The rent portion goes deepest. Market money follows. The smith's coin is wrapped separately so you do not accidentally spend his payment on onions and regret it later. The roof coin remains undecided. You leave it on the table. The dog sniffs it. You move it away from him. You do not know what he would buy, but you suspect meat. The candle flame trembles. Your spouse closes the chest. The iron key turns again. For tonight, the household accounts are finished. Nothing has become richer. Nothing has become easier. But the rent is remembered, the winter stores considered, the debts faced, and tomorrow's market made slightly less uncertain. You pick up the single undecided coin. Your spouse looks at you. You look toward the roof, then toward the grain sacks. The coin disappears back into the purse. Some decisions, it seems, are best allowed one more night of sleep. The iron key has barely returned to its hook when someone knocks at the oak door. 3 slow taps. Then silence. You and your spouse both look toward the latch. The dog is already there. He rises with the gravity of a castle guard who has finally been given meaningful employment, plants himself near the threshold, and produces one low warning sound from deep in his chest. The knock comes again. Not urgent, not frightened, just familiar. Your spouse lifts the wooden bar while you move closer to the hearth, partly to make room and partly because visitors have a remarkable ability to bring the entire night's weather indoors with them. The door opens. Cold air rolls across the rushes. A neighbour stands outside wrapped in a dark russet cloak, damp at the shoulders, holding a small clay jug under one arm and a wicker basket in the other. Behind him, mist fills the lane, pale beneath the moon, and water still drips steadily from the eaves. He steps inside. The dog sniffs him with great seriousness. Apparently satisfied that no invasion is underway, he immediately begins investigating the basket. Your neighbour lifts it higher. There are onions inside. 3 onions, to be precise, and a broken leather strap. This is the true purpose of the visit. Not the onions. The strap. He has seen the repaired shoe by your hearth before. He knows your spouse keeps an awl and spare leather. Tomorrow he needs the strap fixed before taking a small load toward market. In exchange, he offers the onions. This is how much of village life moves. Not everything needs coin. A repaired hinge may be exchanged for eggs. A bucket may be borrowed until morning. Someone lends a cart. Someone else provides labour at harvest. A neighbour watches an animal. Another shares salt when a household discovers its supply has vanished at the worst possible time. Your spouse accepts the strap. You accept the onions. Both sides believe they have done reasonably well. The dog remains unconvinced. Your neighbour places the clay jug on the table. Ale, not a great quantity. Enough to justify another cup. You bring the stools closer to the fire. Nobody removes every layer of clothing because the visit will not last long, but the wet cloak is loosened and spread near the warmth. Steam begins to rise faintly from its hem. The smell of wet wool returns to the room. You had almost missed it. Almost. The shared cup passes once around the hearth. And then comes the real currency of the evening. News. A cart lost a wheel near the mill road. You know the cart. Of course you do. It is the same one whose wheel squeals along the lane every morning, and whose owner appears convinced that Greece is a foreign conspiracy. Apparently the wheel finally objected. Nobody is hurt. The cart remains in a ditch. Its owner has sworn loudly enough that several saints are now probably aware of the situation. You smile into the cup. There is also news from the market. A cloth merchant has arrived from another town carrying bright dyed wool, including a blue so deep several people have already gathered merely to stare at it. Indigo and woad-dyed cloth can command attention in a village accustomed to more ordinary browns, russets, greys, and undyed wool. Your neighbour says the price is absurd. This means he asks the price. Your spouse asks whether he bought anything. He looks offended. So, naturally, he bought a narrow strip. Village gossip is rarely malicious at first. It begins with weather, then prices, then roads, then animals. Only after these safe subjects have been exhausted does it approach human beings. The miller, apparently, has argued with a farmer over the weight of grain. The manor reeve has been seen inspecting boundary markers. A pilgrim passed through carrying badges from 3 different shrines and stories from twice as many. Someone claims the pilgrim has seen the sea. Someone else claims he has never travelled farther than the next county. No one can quite agree whether his badges are genuine. Your neighbour says one looks suspiciously new. You think of the faded cloth beside your hearth said to have touched a saint's shrine. You decide silence is wise. Some pilgrim badges are treasured souvenirs, small lead or pewter tokens showing saints, shrines, shells, crosses, or sacred symbols. They may be worn on hats or cloaks as proof of a journey and devotion. They also make excellent evidence for exaggeration. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether travellers become better storytellers because they have seen more of the world or because nobody at home can check. The fire cracks softly. Your neighbour warms both hands around the cup. Another piece of news follows. A woman 2 houses away has hung a horseshoe above her doorway. Not for a horse, for luck. Some swear iron keeps evil influences from entering a house. Others insist the horseshoe must point upward so luck cannot spill out. Elsewhere, people hang it differently. No one seems willing to conduct the experiment properly. Your spouse glances toward the rowan twigs tied near your own door. You say nothing. Superstition is always slightly ridiculous when it belongs to someone else. The neighbour remembers the leather strap and places it across his knee. Your spouse examines the split. It can be fixed. Not tonight. Tomorrow morning will do. The strap is set beside the mending basket. Another exchange completed without parchment, seals, or witnesses. Outside, footsteps pass. Someone laughs briefly in the lane. A second figure appears at the doorway, this time a woman from farther down the row carrying an empty wooden bowl. She needs a little yeast or ale balm for baking in the morning. Your spouse has some. The woman waits only a moment while a small portion is transferred into her bowl. In return, she promises a piece of fresh bread tomorrow. Promises like that are not formally recorded. Everyone remembers anyway. She also contributes 1 piece of gossip concerning a goose that entered the churchyard and refused to leave. The goose apparently chased the sexton. This may be the most important news of the evening. You make the mistake of laughing. The dog wakes again. The woman disappears back into the mist, guarding her bowl carefully beneath her cloak. Your first visitor finishes his ale. The hour is getting late. The distant monastery bell sounds again, lower now in the damp night. Its slow notes change the room. Your neighbour stands. The damp cloak goes back around his shoulders. The wicker basket remains with you, now lighter by 3 onions. He takes the empty jug. The repaired strap will wait until morning. At the threshold he pauses and mentions one final thing. A cold wind is expected before dawn. How he knows is unclear. His knee aches. Apparently this qualifies him as a weather prophet. Some swear old injuries can sense storms. Even now. It is hard to tell whether joints truly predict weather, or whether people simply remember the occasions when they happen to be right. You promise to keep the shutters tight. Then the neighbour steps outside. The oak door closes behind him. You lower the bar. Suddenly the house feels larger and quieter. The onions sit on the table. The leather strap lies beside the mending basket. The last warmth from another person's presence fades slowly from the stool. You listen as footsteps retreat through the mud. Soon they vanish altogether. The village beyond your walls remains connected by dozens of doors like yours, each holding its own fire, its own worries, its own supper scraps, its own small debts and favours. Tonight, 3 onions, a little balm, 1 broken strap, and several pieces of gossip have passed between them. It does not sound like much, but this is how a village holds together. For a while after the neighbour leaves, you remain beside the barred door. The house has changed again. A few moments ago it held 3 voices, the clink of a shared cup, the smell of wet wool, and news from the lane. Now it seems almost too still. The fire murmurs behind you. The dog has returned to his place near the threshold. Somewhere in the wall, a mouse resumes whatever business it abandoned during the visit. Then the monastery bell sounds. 1 note, another. Slow, distant, steady. The sound crosses fields you cannot see, passes above hedges and winter gardens, and arrives at your house softened by mist. You have heard bells all your life, but at night they feel different. During daylight they mark work, prayer, market hours, meals, and movement. After dark, each stroke seems to measure the size of the silence around you. Your spouse glances toward the shutter. The neighbour's warning about colder wind before dawn has not been forgotten. Neither has the animal Pen. You reach for the cloak still hanging near the hearth. It is not completely dry, but it is warmer than before. You wrap it around your shoulders, lift the wooden bar again, and open the door just wide enough to slip outside. The dog follows instantly. Of course he does. Apparently this is now a patrol. Cold air catches the warmth from your face. The rain has stopped completely, leaving the lane dark and shining. Mud reflects thin patches of moonlight. Roofs rise as black shapes against a cloudy sky, and here and there a tiny glow escapes around a shutter. You pull the cloak tighter. Horse breath drifts white near a neighbouring fence. A cow shifts somewhere behind a wattle enclosure. From a farther yard comes the soft complaint of a pig settling into straw. Animals are part of the household economy, and they do not care that you've already finished supper, repaired a stocking, counted coins, and entertained visitors. They require checking anyway. You cross the small yard toward your own shelter. Your boots sink slightly. There is something particularly insulting about stepping into fresh mud immediately after scraping your boots clean. Medieval domestic life is generous with repetition. The dog trots ahead, nose low. A weak moon shows the outline of the small enclosure. You check the latch first. Wood swells in wet weather, and the fastening needs a firm push before it settles properly. Inside, the straw is damp near one edge but dry enough where the animal lies. You reach down and adjust a loose bundle. Hay matters. Dry bedding matters. Winter turns every small weakness into a larger one. A draught ignored in autumn becomes frozen water in January. A damaged roof becomes spoiled fodder. A loose fence becomes an animal wandering into someone else's cabbages, which is one of the faster ways to turn neighbourly affection into a manor court dispute. You test the fence with both hands. It holds. The dog lifts his head sharply. You stop. For a moment you hear nothing. Then, from somewhere across the dark fields, comes a faint sound like wood knocking against wood. Perhaps a gate. Perhaps a cart. Perhaps nothing more than branches. Some swear that strange noises after dark are best ignored because calling out invites whatever made them to answer. Others insist that unexplained sounds usually have perfectly ordinary causes and that fear simply improves the imagination. No one can quite agree which belief has preserved more lives. You choose the sensible medieval compromise. You do not call out. You also walk slightly faster. Beyond the yard, the village edge opens toward fields silvered by mist. Low hedges divide one holding from another. Farther away, a line of trees marks the forest road. You can barely see it, but you know where it runs. By daylight, carts, pilgrims, merchants, drovers, monks, and farmers use those tracks. At night, the road belongs mostly to darkness. A tiny point of orange appears near the manor lands. A watchfire. It burns steadily beside a distant gate or outbuilding, too far away to warm you but close enough to remind you that someone else is awake. Night watches matter where property, animals, gates, and stored food need protection. Towns may have watchmen moving through streets, while castles and larger estates maintain guards according to their own routines. Your village is smaller. Here, people rely heavily on barred doors, barking dogs, sharp ears, and neighbours who notice anything unusual because they notice almost everything. The dog suddenly barks once. You nearly leave your soul in the yard. He runs toward the fence. You follow his gaze. A pale shape moves near the lane. Then it becomes a person. A late traveller is passing beneath a hood, carrying a staff and a small bundle. A metal badge catches a flicker of moonlight on the cloak. Perhaps a pilgrim. Perhaps the same one mentioned beside the hearth. The figure does not stop. You watch until it disappears between houses. Pilgrims often carry badges from shrines, and travellers may seek shelter at inns, monasteries, hospitals, or private homes depending on circumstance. Yet after dark, hospitality competes with caution. A stranger at noon is interesting. A stranger knocking after midnight is theology for the brave. You turn back toward the house. Before going inside, you inspect the shutter fastenings from outside. Wooden shutters are valuable barriers against wind as well as unwanted attention. Glass windows are uncommon in modest homes like yours, so openings rely on shutters, cloth, horn, or other practical coverings. One hinge is loose. Not dangerously. Not tonight. Another task for tomorrow. You make a mental note and immediately resent tomorrow. Near the threshold, the dried herb bundle still hangs where your spouse placed it. Rue, rosemary. Perhaps something else. In the cold moonlight, it looks more mysterious than it did earlier. Some households mark thresholds with crosses, protective signs, horseshoes, iron objects, herbs, or blessings. The doorway is more than a piece of carpentry. It is the boundary between household safety and everything beyond it. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether such protections defend against spirits, sickness, envy, or simply the unease people feel when darkness presses close to the walls. You touch the iron latch. Cold. Solid. Reassuring. Another bell note travels across the fields. You look toward the invisible monastery. For monks, the night does not erase the rhythm of prayer. Bells may summon them from sleep for offices, while most villagers remain beneath blankets, hearing only distant echoes. Tonight, that distant sound makes the village seem both larger and safer. Somewhere beyond the mist, other people are awake. You return indoors. Warmth closes around you. Your spouse has stirred the fire and added one small piece of wood. You shut the oak door, lower the bar firmly, then check it once more. The dog shakes mud across the rushes. You look at him. He looks pleased. Your recently cleaned floor has officially returned to medieval standards. You scrape your boots again. The cloak goes back on its peg. You secure the shutter from inside and press your fingers around its wooden fastening until you are satisfied. Outside, the cold wind begins to move more strongly through the lane. Inside, the fire glows beneath soot-black rafters. The watchfire remains somewhere beyond the fields. The monastery bell fades, and with the animals checked, the shutters fastened, and the oak door barred against the deepening night, you return to the hearth beside your spouse, carrying a little of the darkness in your cold hands. Your cold hands hover above the hearth until feeling returns to them. The wind presses once against the shutter, then slips away along the wall. Somewhere beyond the lane, a loose piece of wood knocks softly against a fence. The dog circles near the fire, turns twice, and lies down with his nose beneath one paw. Your spouse reaches toward the small shelf beside the hearth. Evening work has nearly finished. Now comes another kind of habit. The wooden cross hanging against the wall is dark from years of smoke. Beneath it rests the faded strip of cloth that is supposed to have touched a saint's shrine, though the neighbours' doubts about its history have never entirely disappeared. Beside these sit a tiny clay lamp, a dried sprig of rosemary, and a little lead pilgrim badge stamped with an image worn almost smooth. You lower yourself onto the bench. Your spouse does the same. Prayer in a household like yours is not always grand or formal. There is no choir, no painted vault overhead, no polished stone beneath your knees, only firelight, rushes, tired hands, and familiar words repeated often enough that they seem to belong to the room itself. You make the sign of the cross. Your spouse follows. The dog opens one eye. He declines participation. You murmur the prayers you know. Some are learned from childhood. Others are fragments remembered from church services, feast days, sermons, and family habit. Latin belongs more comfortably to priests and learned clerks than to your tongue, but familiar phrases still enter ordinary life. Saints are remembered by name. The dead are remembered. The sick are included. Travellers on dark roads receive a thought. So does the leaking roof. You suspect heaven receives many requests concerning roofs. The monastery bells have fallen silent now, but their earlier sound remains in your mind. Your spouse touches the little pilgrim badge. It was bought years ago from someone returning from a shrine. Perhaps the badge came from Canterbury, Walsingham, or some nearer holy place. Such tokens may be worn openly on hats or cloaks during travel, then kept afterward as reminders of pilgrimage and protection. The lead surface is cold beneath your thumb. Some people believe objects connected with saints or shrines can guard a household from illness, danger, or sudden misfortune. Relics inspire even stronger devotion, though genuine relics are usually far beyond the reach of a modest home. That does not stop stories. A church a few villages away is said to possess a bone from a saint's finger. Another church claims to have a scrap of cloth from an apostle. A traveller once insisted he had seen 3 different monasteries displaying the same saint's tooth. No one can quite agree whether this proves a miracle or ambitious bookkeeping. You leave theology to better rested people. Near the door, the rowan twigs tied with red thread remain in place. Your spouse glances toward them. They are not part of official church teaching. Neither is the herb bundle near the threshold. Neither, strictly speaking, is the small iron nail driven into the beam above the bed. Yet there they remain. Medieval households often live comfortably with overlapping layers of belief. The priest blesses the house. A grandmother ties herbs by the door. Someone scratches a cross into a beam. Someone else places iron near a cradle or bed. A charm may contain sacred words, mysterious letters, or a prayer folded into cloth. Faith and folk custom sit beside one another like relatives at a crowded feast. They do not always agree. They also rarely leave. Your spouse takes a small bundle from the shelf. Inside is a dried piece of plant tied with thread. St. John's wort, perhaps, or vervain. The leaves are too dry now for you to be certain. It is meant to protect against bad dreams. At least that is what your spouse's aunt claimed. Some swear that certain herbs placed near the bed repel nightmares, harmful spirits, or illness. Others hang them simply because the smell is pleasant and insects dislike them. Even now, it is hard to tell whether the charm survives because it works, because people believe it works, or because nobody wants to throw away a thing that might become important immediately after being discarded. You understand this perfectly. You once kept a bent nail for 6 years because it looked potentially useful. The herb bundle has stronger credentials than that. Your spouse hangs it again near the sleeping area. The half-burned beeswax candle is moved closer. Its flame throws the cross-shaped shadow of the window fastening across the wall. For a moment, the mark looks deliberate. You notice it. Your spouse notices it. Neither of you comments. Shadows after dark deserve very little encouragement. There are other small customs. You do not leave a knife lying carelessly with its edge turned toward the bed. Some people say this invites quarrels or bad dreams. You do not whistle indoors at night. Your spouse's mother insists it attracts unwanted things. What things, exactly, she has never explained. Perhaps spirits. Perhaps neighbours. The second possibility is worse because neighbours expect ale. You straighten the small knife on the table. A little salt remains in the locked chest. Some households scatter salt near thresholds for protection. Others use blessed water when they can obtain it. Holy water may be brought home from church and kept for illness, childbirth, storms, or anxious nights. Your household has only a few drops left in a tiny covered vessel. Your spouse checks it. Still there. Nothing tonight requires it. You both seem relieved. Prayer continues quietly. You ask protection for the house through the night. For the animals. For stored grain. For kin elsewhere. For travellers. For the living and the dead. The list is longer than the prayer itself. Then your spouse mentions the traveller who passed through the mist earlier. You remember the pilgrim badge catching moonlight. Perhaps he has shelter now. Perhaps he walks still. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether night travellers should be pitied for their hardship or admired for their courage. You think both are possible. The wind rises again. The shutter creaks. Your spouse reaches over and tightens its fastening without standing fully. The prayer ends. There is no dramatic change in the room. The roof does not glow. The herbs do not move. No saint appears above the hearth to approve your domestic arrangements. The fire simply burns lower. Yet the house feels slightly more settled. The cross hangs where it always hangs. The relic-like cloth remains beside it. The rowan twigs guard the door according to whichever explanation you prefer. The iron nail waits above the bed. The pilgrim badge catches one last point of candlelight. You sit beside your spouse in the quiet. Faith here is not separate from daily life. It lives beside the cooking pot, among the tools, above the bed, near the door, inside the chest, and inside habits repeated every evening until they become part of what home means. The dog sighs. Your spouse rises. There is still washing to do before bed. And after prayer, with saints remembered and shadows properly ignored, you reach for the basin. The basin is not large, and the water inside it is not warm. You know this before your fingers touch it. Still, knowing does not help. You dip the cloth into the water and immediately understand why elaborate evening bathing is unlikely to become a regular household custom in the middle of winter. Cold water bites at your fingertips, while the fire crackles nearby with the smug confidence of something that knows you cannot climb directly into it. Your spouse pours a small amount of heated water from a clay pot into the basin. Steam rises faintly. Not enough to make the water hot. Enough to make it negotiable. You begin with your hands. Dirt hides around the nails, in the creases of the knuckles, and beneath the rough places where work has thickened the skin. You rub carefully with the damp cloth, then wash your face, neck, and behind your ears. The water clouds quickly. Medieval cleanliness is not simply a matter of whether people bathe or do not bathe. You wash what needs washing with the water, fuel, time, and privacy available. Hands and faces are cleaned frequently enough in many households, especially before meals, religious observances, or bed. Full bathing can require considerably more trouble. A large tub means water. Water means carrying, then heating, then more carrying, then discovering that half the household suddenly wants to use the tub before it cools. By that point, cleanliness has become a military campaign. Tonight the basin will do. Your spouse washes beside you, wringing the cloth hard between red fingers. Wet wool remains hanging near the hearth, and the room still carries the familiar combination of smoke, herbs, leather, and human beings who have spent all day doing actual work. You scrub a streak of mud from your ankle. How it entered your stocking is unclear. Mud has skills. No one has yet written a proper treatise explaining them. You pour the dirty water aside and add a little fresh water from the bucket. Not much. Every unnecessary cup means another journey to the well. On the shelf above the basin rests a small wooden comb. You reach for it. Its teeth are uneven and polished from use. A finer comb would cost more, but this one does what it needs to do. You draw it slowly through your hair, working from the ends rather than dragging it painfully from the roots. Your spouse does the same after you. Combs are useful for more than neatness. They help remove dirt. They help find lice. This second purpose gives them a level of importance rarely celebrated in romantic songs. You inspect the teeth. Nothing moves. A successful evening. Some people believe certain herbs can discourage lice when rubbed into hair or clothing. Rosemary, lavender, pennyroyal, or other strongly scented plants may be used depending on local custom and availability. Whether every remedy works as claimed is another question. Some swear that lice prefer particular temperaments, foods, or even moral characters. No one can quite agree whether this tells you more about lice or about people who enjoy judging their neighbours. You return the comb to its peg. Next comes your mouth. Toothbrushes as you know them do not wait beside the basin, but teeth are not simply ignored. You rinse your mouth with water, then use a small piece of cloth to rub the surfaces of your teeth. Some people clean with powders made from salt, herbs, charcoal, crushed materials, or other abrasive mixtures. Others chew on small twigs until the ends fray into fibres. You have a little mixture of salt and dried sage. You use only a pinch. It tastes exactly as delightful as it sounds. Your spouse watches your expression with quiet satisfaction. You rinse. There are also cures for toothache that sound considerably less pleasant. Herbal poultices may be applied. Clove, where available and affordable, can ease pain. Other remedies involve prayers, charms, fumigation, or substances whose greatest medical achievement may be convincing the sufferer that the tooth was not the worst part of the evening. Some swear that a toothache comes from a tiny worm living inside the tooth. This belief is very old. You cannot see such a creature. That does not prevent people from blaming it. You decide your teeth currently seem peaceful and prefer not to investigate further. Your spouse reaches toward a small pouch hanging near the hearth. Inside are dried herbs gathered earlier in the year, a little chamomile, some mint, a scrap of dried willow bark. Not every household possesses the same remedies, but simple herbs often become part of domestic medicine. A warm infusion might be used for stomach discomfort or sleeplessness. Willow bark may be taken for pain. Mint can settle certain digestive troubles. The village healer knows more combinations than you do. She also knows enough to charge for the interesting ones. Tonight no one is ill. Still, your spouse puts a little dried mint into a cup and pours hot water over it. The smell rises gently. You hold the cup near your face and breathe in. After smoke, onions, wet wool, and dog, mint feels almost luxurious. You drink slowly. The warmth reaches your stomach. Near the edge of the hearth lie two smooth stones. Your spouse has placed them there earlier to absorb heat. You test one carefully with the back of your fingers. Warm, not scorching. These will be wrapped in cloth and carried toward the bed to take some of the chill from the blankets. Heated stones, bricks, or warming pans can make cold bedding more tolerable, though all require caution around fabric and straw. A bed warmed too enthusiastically becomes a very different kind of bedtime problem. You wrap the first stone in wool. The second follows. Some households place herbs near bedding for scent, insects, or protection. Lavender may be tucked among linen where available. Rue or rosemary might be used according to local habit. Your spouse adds a small sprig beside the wrapped stone. You raise an eyebrow. For fragrance, apparently, or perhaps protection. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether pleasant-smelling herbs repel evil or merely make evil smell better. The fire has burned lower now. You dry your hands on a rough linen cloth. Your face feels clean enough. Your hair is combed. Your teeth no longer taste entirely of supper. Your feet are still tired. Your back still aches slightly. But the day has begun to leave your body. The basin is emptied carefully. The cloth is wrung out and hung where it can dry. The comb returns to the peg. The herbs go back into their pouch. Everything has a place because finding things by firelight is an excellent way to discover how many household objects possess sharp edges. Your spouse carries one wrapped warming stone toward the sleeping area. You take the other. Behind you, the half-burned beeswax candle flickers beside the hearth. Ahead, the bed waits in shadow. And with clean hands, warm stones, mint still lingering on your breath, and the night sealed firmly outside the shutters, the household begins to turn at last toward its most private hours. The wrapped warming stone in your hands is still pleasantly hot when you set it down near the sleeping place, but you do not begin arranging the bed just yet. There is another pause before that, a quieter one. Your spouse remains near the hearth, where the last strong flames have fallen into red embers beneath a skin of pale ash. The room feels smaller now that the evening tasks have thinned away. The bowls are dry, the chest is locked, the mending basket is closed, the shutters are fastened. For the first time all day, there is almost nothing demanding your hands. You sit beside your spouse. The bench creaks beneath both of you. For a while, you simply watch the fire. Marriage in a household like this is lived less through grand declarations than through accumulated ordinary hours. You carry water together. You argue silently over salt. You remember whose turn it is to repair the shutter. You know which shoulder aches after harvest and which side of the hearth the other prefers when the wind is cold. Most of this would make poor material for a minstrel. It makes excellent material for surviving winter. Your spouse rubs tired fingers over one wrist. You notice. Earlier those hands cut bread, stirred pottage, repaired leather, counted coins, shared balm with a neighbour, and tightened the shutter against the night. Now they rest. You place your own hand beside them on the bench. Nothing dramatic happens. The dog snores. This is perhaps the most honest witness medieval romance could ask for. You begin talking softly about tomorrow. There is the leather strap promised to the neighbour. The smith must be paid. The loose shutter hinge needs attention. Someone should inspect the roof before the next rain. And grain, always grain. You both glance instinctively toward the sacks along the wall. A marriage is partly an agreement to worry about the same pile of barley. The market may offer better flour tomorrow if the road remains passable. Your spouse thinks the price will rise after the recent rain. You think the merchants merely say that whenever they see customers approaching. No one can quite agree whether bad roads genuinely raise every market price, or simply provide merchants with a particularly useful expression of sorrow. You decide to ask before buying. Your spouse knows perfectly well that you will still complain afterward. The conversation moves from household matters to family. A cousin may visit before the next feast day. There has been no message yet, though messages in your world arrive when roads, weather, horses, and human memory permit. A travelling merchant might carry news. A priest might mention something heard in another parish. A relative may simply appear at the door with a bundle and assume the matter settled. Hospitality is expected. Preparation is optional. You picture another body near the hearth, another bowl at supper, another pair of wet boots beside the door. The dog would approve. Your grain sack would not. Your spouse leans back against the wall. Firelight catches the tired lines around familiar eyes. You speak next about the manor. Not loudly. Walls do not truly have ears, but neighbours sometimes do, which creates roughly the same effect. The reeve inspecting boundary stones has made several households uneasy. A disputed strip of meadow can become an argument at the manor court, and the lord's officials have long memories when obligations are involved. You hope nothing concerns your holding. Your spouse hopes the same. There are things married couples can change and things they can only prepare to endure. Weather belongs to the second kind. So do rents. So, frequently, do relatives. The half-burned candle trembles beside you. Your spouse mentions the pilgrim seen earlier on the road. Perhaps it brings back memories of another traveller from years ago, someone who carried a scallop shell badge and claimed to have walked farther than anyone in the village could imagine. Some swear that married people should never part after an argument before one of them travels, because anger left unresolved may draw misfortune onto the road. Whether anyone truly believes this every time is difficult to know, but the custom has a practical wisdom. Roads are uncertain. People leave and do not always return quickly. You look toward the barred oak door. There have been days when one of you has gone to market before dawn and returned after dark, soaked through, exhausted, and irritated by every cart between here and town. There have been evenings when waiting felt longer than travelling. You understand why old customs gather around departures. Your spouse nudges your shoulder lightly. The thought passes. You talk about nothing important for a while. The neighbour's goose. The merchant's absurdly expensive blue cloth. The broken cartwheel. The suspicious pilgrim badge. You both agree that the cart owner will probably repair the wheel without fixing the squeak. This is the kind of certainty unavailable to theologians but obvious to married households. A small laugh escapes you. Then the room becomes quiet again. There are expectations surrounding marriage in your world, some written in church teaching, some enforced by custom, family, property, inheritance, and reputation. Husbands and wives do not always hold equal legal or social power, and the details vary by place, status, wealth, and local practice. But inside this particular room, the grand structures of society become smaller. The question is whether there is enough wood for morning, whether the other person is too tired to fetch it, whether a cough is worsening, whether the last apple should be saved, whether the silence beside the hearth is peaceful or troubled. You know the difference. Tonight it is peaceful. Your spouse tells you about a small ache in one hand. You examine it by candlelight. No swelling. No wound. Probably overwork. You rub the knuckles gently. A village healer might recommend warmed oil, herbs, rest, or some charm involving a saint whose specialty is disputed by 3 neighbouring parishes. Some swear that tying red thread around an aching joint keeps pain from wandering deeper into the body. You have red thread. You also have common sense. Tonight warmth will do. You hold the hand near the embers. The dog shifts in his sleep. Outside, the cold wind presses along the wall, but the shutters do not move. You realize that much of married life is made from moments no chronicle records. A cup passed without asking. A cloak moved closer to the fire. A coin left undecided because both people are tired. A hand warmed beside another. The candle shortens. Your spouse looks toward the darkened sleeping place. Soon you will shake out the bedding, inspect the straw, and make the bed ready against draughts and fleas. But not yet. For another minute you remain where you are, shoulder against shoulder, listening to the embers settle and allowing the day to grow finely, gently small. At last you rise from the bench. The quiet companionship beside the hearth has done what warmth often does at the end of a long day. It has made your limbs heavier. Your spouse takes one of the wrapped warming stones, and together you move toward the sleeping place. The bed occupies the darker end of the room. It is not grand. There are no carved angels above it, no embroidered canopy, no velvet curtains heavy enough to bankrupt a small village. The frame is oak, plain and sturdy, raised just enough above the floor to keep you away from the coldest draughts. A rope support stretches beneath the mattress. You press one hand against it. Still firm. That is fortunate. A sagging rope bed has a way of turning 2 married sleepers into one uncomfortable heap before morning. The mattress itself is filled with straw. You lift one corner. A dry, dusty smell escapes. Straw bedding can be comfortable enough when fresh, especially compared with bare boards or cold stone, but it needs attention. Old straw flattens, breaks, collects dirt, and offers hospitality to creatures nobody invited. You and your spouse shake the mattress gently. Dust rises. The dog sneezes from across the room. Apparently sheep and straw are now both enemies. You pat the mattress flat again, then pull back the coarse linen covering. Inspection comes next. Not because you are suspicious. Because you are experienced. Fleas are persistent companions in medieval households, along with lice, bedbugs, and whatever else manages to discover that human beings produce warmth. You run your fingers along a seam. Nothing obvious. Your spouse checks the opposite side. Some people scatter herbs through bedding to discourage insects. Lavender, mint, rosemary, southernwood, or pennyroyal may be used where available. Strong smells help, though they do not perform miracles. You take a small handful of dried herbs from a cloth pouch. Mint and rosemary tonight. You crush them lightly between your fingers before scattering them beneath the linen. The scent rises pleasantly. Whether the fleas are impressed remains unknown. No one can quite agree whether certain herbs truly drive every pest away or merely make the pest smell respectable. You choose optimism. Your spouse brings over the first wrapped warming stone. You slide it beneath the wool blanket near the foot of the bed. The second goes closer to the middle. They must not remain against fabric too long, but for now they slowly push back the chill that has gathered in the bedding since morning. You spread the blankets. Wool is heavy, practical, and valuable. The outer one is dark brown, faded along one edge where it has been patched. Beneath it lies a lighter blanket with 2 repairs near the corner. Nothing matches. Everything works. You smooth them together. Near the head of the bed are 2 small pillows stuffed with wool scraps and feathers gathered over time. Wealthier households may sleep on finer linen and softer feather beds, but comfort exists in degrees. Your pillow is lumpy. Your spouse's is also lumpy. Marriage has achieved equality. You punch yours twice and decide it has improved. It has not. Beside the bed stands a small wooden stool. This is where the stranger objects of the night gather. The precious half-burned beeswax candle. The comb. A clay cup. A small knife. A sprig of dried herbs. And the little pilgrim badge that caught the firelight earlier. Your spouse also places an iron key on the stool. Not because the chest needs opening. Because old habits are powerful. Some households keep iron near the bed for protection. Keys, knives, nails, or other iron objects may be thought to discourage harmful spirits, nightmares, or ill luck. Some swear that placing a key beneath the pillow protects a sleeper. Others say it helps reveal hidden things in dreams. You consider the weight of the key. You prefer your dreams undiscovered and your skull unbruised. The key remains on the stool. Above the bed, the iron nail driven into the beam casts a thin shadow. Your spouse checks the dried charm hanging nearby. Still secure. There are stories about what should and should not be kept beside a bed. Shoes placed wrongly may invite bad fortune. A mirror, in households wealthy enough to possess one, might attract uneasy beliefs after dark. Certain knives should not lie with their blades pointed towards sleepers. Holy objects, by contrast, are welcome. You move the small knife so its edge faces away. Not because you are frightened. Because it takes 1 second. This is how superstition survives. The draft from the wall becomes more noticeable now that you're standing still. You tuck an old folded cloth along a gap near the lower board. The wind softens. Another rag goes near the bed frame where cold air creeps upward. Winter households wage endless small wars against drafts. A strip of cloth here. A board there. More straw. Another blanket. The enemy is invisible and extremely patient. Your spouse tests the wool covering near the foot. Warmer. You remove one stone and set it beside the hearth to cool. The other remains beneath the blanket a little longer. You sit on the edge of the bed. The rope beneath the mattress creaks but holds. Your boots come off. They are placed beside the bed, toes turned outward. Your spouse notices, then nudges one. Some people insist shoes should not be left pointing directly toward the bed because they may invite restless sleep or encourage the spirit to wander. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether anyone truly fears this or simply prefers not to trip over footwear in darkness. Your spouse turns both boots sideways. You decide not to argue. The wool stockings come off next. Cold air touches your feet. You immediately regret civilization. You tuck them beneath the edge of the bed where they can dry near residual warmth rather than remain damp all night. The dog finally wanders over. He looks at the prepared bed, then at you, then at the floor. A decision is being made. You point firmly toward his place by the hearth. He lies down with the expression of a noble unjustly denied inheritance. Your spouse checks the candle. Not much remains. Enough. You pull the blankets back and feel the warmth left by the stone. Good. The straw beneath you rustles as you settle. The pillow remains lumpy. The herbs smell faintly of mint. The oak frame creaks. Above, soot-black rafters disappear into shadow. Everything is ready. The door is barred. The shutters are closed. The charms remain where tradition says they should. The iron key rests nearby. The wool blankets hold the day's last warmth. And for the first time since you crossed the muddy threshold, the household asks nothing more from your hands. You ease yourself beneath the wool blankets and feel the mattress answer with a long whisper of straw. The bed is warmer than it was a few minutes ago. One of the heated stones has done its work near your feet, leaving a pocket of comfort beneath the heavy blankets. Your spouse settles beside you, and the rope supports beneath the mattress creak once, then becomes still. For a moment, neither of you moves. The house sounds different from bed. Closer. Larger. Every small noise seems to belong to the darkness. The hearth gives a soft crack as one ember collapses. A wooden beam somewhere overhead answers with a faint tick. Wind slips around the outside wall, brushes the shutter, and disappears. The dog turns once beside the hearth, claws scratching lightly through the rushes before he settles again. You pull the blanket higher. The wool smells faintly of smoke, dried herbs, and years of use. Your spouse shifts beside you. The mattress dips. You find the hollow your body already knows. A good bed in a household like this is not good because it is soft. It is good because it is familiar. You know which rope creaks. You know which corner of the mattress contains harder straw. You know that the left edge is colder when the wind comes from the fields. You know that if the dog begins dreaming loudly, sleep becomes a negotiation. Tonight, he is quiet. The half-burned beeswax candle still burns on the stool beside the bed. Its flame is small now. You watch it bend slightly in a draught. The room beyond it fades into shadow, the locked chest, the mending basket, the table where you counted coins, the bowls drying near the hearth, the 3 onions from your neighbour, and the dark outline of the oak door. All the evening's small labours remain visible for only another minute. Your spouse reaches toward the candle. Before extinguishing it, there is one final glance round the room. Door barred. Shutters fastened. Fire safe. No cloth too close to the embers. Nothing unusual near the grain sacks. The dog present. This last item is less a security measure than a fact. The flame disappears beneath pinched fingers or a small snuffer. Darkness comes quickly. Not complete darkness. The hearth still holds a dull reddish glow, enough to shape the room but not enough to reveal detail. You lie back. The pillow presses unevenly beneath your head. You turn it. The other side is somehow worse. You return it to its original position and accept defeat. Medieval bedding teaches humility. Some people sleep partly upright when illness, habit, or furniture encourages it. Others curl closely beneath blankets to preserve warmth. Shared beds are common in many circumstances, especially when space and bedding are limited. Tonight, you lie beside your spouse because this is your bed, your room, your household, and warmth is much easier to keep when two bodies share it. The cold beyond the blankets feels very far away. Your breathing slows. You listen. Far off, beyond walls and fields, another bell sounds from the monastery. The note is faint enough that you're not sure whether you truly hear it or merely expect it. Bells mark religious hours through the night, calling monks to offices while most of the village remains asleep. Their rhythm continues even when roads are empty and shutters closed. Some swear that hearing a bell while falling asleep protects the household until morning. Others say a bell heard in dreams carries a message. No one can quite agree whether the message is important or whether a sleeping mind simply borrows whatever sound reaches it. You hope yours says only that the roof survives the night. Your spouse murmurs something too softly to understand. You answer with a sound rather than words. Conversation is finished. The day begins loosening its hold. Images pass through your mind without order. The muddy lane. The broken cartwheel. The suspicious pilgrim badge. The neighbour's onions. The undecided coin. The cold yard beneath the moon. You remember scraping mud from your boots. You remember the warmth of the pottage bowl. You remember your spouse's hand near the embers. Each memory becomes less distinct. Outside, the village is nearly asleep now. Behind other oak doors, other families lie beneath wool and linen. A childless old couple may share a narrow bed near their hearth. A servant may sleep on straw in a corner of a larger hall. A prosperous household might rest behind bed curtains beneath finer blankets. But everywhere, darkness presses close. Night makes rich and poor rooms more alike than daylight does. The same wind finds every roof. The same cold follows every wall. The same desire for warmth draws people beneath blankets. A faint rustling comes from near the wall. You open your eyes. Mouse. Probably. The sound stops. You wait. Nothing. Some people believe that strange sounds around a bed after dark should never be named aloud, because naming them gives them attention. You decide this is excellent advice when the alternative is getting out from beneath warm blankets to investigate. The sound does not return. Your eyes close again. The rosemary and mint beneath the linen release a faint scent whenever you shift. Whether they discourage fleas tonight is impossible to know. You feel no bites. This is good enough to count as success. Some swear that sleeping with certain herbs near the pillow encourages pleasant dreams, while others recommend prayers, relics, or blessed objects against nightmares. The little pilgrim badge remains on the stool. The iron key beside it stays cold and silent. If either is protecting you, they are doing so with admirable discretion. Your body grows heavier. The muscles in your back release. Your fingers uncurl. The rough day disappears first from your feet, then from your shoulders. Your spouse's breathing becomes slow and even beside you. You begin to match it without trying. In, Out. Pause. Again. The hearth glow shrinks. The room becomes less a room and more a collection of remembered shapes. Oak beam. Shutter. Door. Blanket. Familiar breath. The first sleep of the night gathers around you gradually rather than arriving all at once. You drift through shallow thoughts. A market stall appears, then vanishes. A blue strip of expensive cloth hangs where the monastery tower should be. The dog sits solemnly beside the manor reeve. The broken cartwheel rolls by itself through a field. Dreams begin rearranging the day before you've fully left it. You do not notice the exact moment when waking ends. No one ever does. One thought simply fails to finish. The blanket remains warm beneath your chin. The wind continues outside. The bell fades beyond the fields. And with the house sealed, the embers low, and your spouse sleeping quietly beside you, you sink fully into the first deep sleep of the medieval night. You wake without knowing why. For several moments, you remain completely still beneath the wool blankets, caught between sleep and awareness. The room is dark enough that the walls have vanished. Only the faintest red glow survives beneath the ash in the hearth, so weak that it seems less like light than the memory of light. Your spouse is breathing beside you. Slowly, evenly. The dog is silent. Outside, the wind has changed. It no longer presses steadily against the shutter. Instead, it comes in soft, irregular breaths, moving along the wall, fading, returning, then disappearing across the dark fields. You blink into the room. Nothing is wrong. That may be the strangest part. You are simply awake. In long winter nights, this is not necessarily unusual. Sleep does not always arrive as one uninterrupted block stretching from evening to dawn. People may wake after several hours, remain awake for a quiet interval, then return to bed for another period of sleep before morning. You do not call it insomnia. You do not stare at a clock. There is no clock. The monastery bells will tell you enough eventually. For now, you lie still and listen. A beam settles. The straw mattress rustles beneath your shoulder. Somewhere near the wall comes the faint scratch of a mouse pursuing its own nocturnal economy. You consider ignoring it. You succeed. Your spouse shifts beside you and opens sleepy eyes. Neither of you speaks immediately. Words feel unnecessary at this hour. Then your spouse whispers something about the fire. You understand. The room has become cold. Reluctantly, you push the blanket away. Cold air finds you at once. Your feet touch the floor. This is a betrayal of everything the bed promised. You stand, wrap a wool cloak around your shoulders, and shuffle toward the hearth. The rushes are cold beneath your feet. A faint glow survives beneath the ash exactly where you hoped it would. You crouch and use the iron poker to open a narrow channel through the grey covering. Red appears, then orange. A tiny spark lifts. You add a few dry twigs, then a thin piece of split wood. Not much. Firewood must last until morning. You bend close and blow gently. The ember brightens. Again, a small flame catches. Warmth does not fill the room, but the darkness retreats enough to show the table, the chest, the bed, and the familiar shape of the dog. He lifts his head. Apparently your midnight activities have been approved. You hold both hands toward the flame. Your spouse joins you, wrapped in a blanket. For a little while you sit together without speaking. This interval belongs to no ordinary part of the day. The work is finished. Morning has not begun. No market waits. No neighbour knocks. No toll collector demands coin. The world outside feels suspended. Some people use these waking hours for prayer, others talk quietly, tend the fire, check animals, relieve themselves, mend something simple, or simply lie awake until sleep returns. You understand why. The mind behaves differently when everyone else seems to be sleeping. Small worries become clearer, or larger, sometimes both. Your spouse asks whether you heard the shutter. You listen. The fastening holds. Still, you rise to check the oak door. The wooden bar remains firmly in place. The iron latch is cold beneath your fingers. You press once against the door. Solid. You look toward the dried herb bundle beside it. Still there. The rowan twigs remain tied with their red thread. Some swear that the hours between first and second sleep are especially suited to dreams, omens, prayer, and strange thoughts because the mind has not fully returned to waking life. Others probably discover that any idea seems profound when considered barefoot beside a dying fire. No one can quite agree. You return to the hearth. The dog stretches and follows you this time. He pauses near the door, sniffs, waits, then looks back. You understand that expression too. You lift the bar just enough to open the door. Cold darkness pours inside. The dog slips into the yard. You stand in the threshold wrapped tightly in your cloak. Above the village, the clouds have thinned. A few stars appear between them. The muddy lane has stiffened slightly in the colder air. Frost is beginning to silver the edge of a puddle. Across the fields, the distant manor watchfire is much smaller now, still burning. Farther away, beyond what you can see, the monastery remains awake in its own rhythm. Monks may already be rising for another office while you stand listening to the night. Then the bell comes, faint, deep. Several slow notes travel over the fields. The sound feels enormous in the darkness. Your spouse appears behind you with a blanket drawn around both shoulders. You listen together. There is something reassuring about bells at this hour. They mean someone remembers time when you do not. Someone is awake. Someone has lit a candle. Someone is crossing cold stone toward prayer. The dog finishes his urgent business and returns looking extremely satisfied with himself. You close the door. The bar drops into place again. Your spouse murmurs a short prayer near the hearth. You join quietly. Nothing elaborate. Protection for the house, for the animals, for absent kin, for anyone still travelling. You think again of the pilgrim who passed beneath the moon earlier. Perhaps he sleeps in a monastery guest house now, cloak drying beside another fire. Perhaps he lies in an inn. Perhaps he's still walking. Those who tell the tale never fully agree whether travellers fear the road more by night or the strangers waiting at the end of it. You hope he's found a door that opened. The little fire has settled. You do not add more wood. Morning will need what remains. You use the poker to draw ash gently around the embers again, preserving their heat. A practiced movement. Cover. Leave air. Protect the glow. Tomorrow's fire begins tonight. Your spouse returns to bed first. You check the room one last time. The bowls, the grain sacks, the chest, the half-burned candle, the mending basket. The undecided coin remains locked away. Nothing has changed. That is comforting. You crawl beneath the wool blankets. The bed has cooled slightly, but your spouse has already warmed one side. You settle into the familiar hollow in the straw. The dog lies down again near the hearth. Your spouse whispers one final comment about the broken cartwheel. Even now, in the middle of the night, you smile into the darkness. Some matters are apparently too important for daylight. Then the whispering stops. The monastery bell has faded. The village is still. Your breathing slows again. This time sleep comes more easily. The interval between sleeps closes without ceremony. The oak door remains barred. The embers glow safely beneath the ash. And as frost gathers quietly outside the walls, you sink once more beneath the weight of wool, moving gently into the second sleep of the night. The second sleep carries you more deeply than the first. There are fewer dreams now, or perhaps they are simply softer, passing beneath awareness like clouds beyond the shutter. You lie almost motionless beneath the wool blankets while the house settles into the coldest hours before dawn. The fire is hidden beneath ash. The dog sleeps near it. Your spouse rests beside you, one hand curled near the edge of the blanket. Nothing needs doing. For once, even the mouse seems to have finished its business. Outside, frost spreads quietly across the village. It gathers along the edges of muddy ruts, turns puddles dull and silver, and stiffens the grass around fences. Roof thatch holds tiny beads of frozen moisture. The cart with the broken wheel remains abandoned near the mill road, its famous squeak temporarily defeated by the simple fact that it is no longer moving. There is justice in the world after all. You know none of this directly. You sleep through it. But the household around you bears the cold in familiar ways. The oak door contracts slightly, timber creaks. The shutters tremble once when the wind changes. The herbs beneath the bedding release the faintest scent whenever one of you shifts. The wrapped warming stones are cold now. Their work is finished. Your feet remain warm anyway. That is enough. The long medieval night has passed through its different shapes around you. Supper and mending, neighbours and prayer, washing and conversation, first sleep and waking, embers tended in darkness, then sleep again. Now there is only stillness. Hours pass without being counted. Then, sometime near the edge of morning, the first distant sound enters your sleep. A bell. You do not wake. Another follows. Far beyond the village, the monastery is beginning another movement through its ancient daily rhythm. Somewhere inside worn stone walls, sleepy monks leave their beds, wrap themselves against the cold, and cross dark passages toward prayer. Perhaps one carries a small lamp. Perhaps another stumbles against a bench and immediately discovers an unexpected reason for humility. Even monasteries cannot spiritualize furniture. The bell continues. Its sound travels over frozen fields, along hedges, across the road where the pilgrim passed, and into the village. Other households receive it too. A baker may already be awake, coaxing his oven toward heat. A servant in the manor may be moving through a cold hall carrying kindling. Someone checks a horse. Someone reaches for shoes beside a straw bed. Someone hears the bell and decides that surely heaven would forgive another minute beneath the blanket. You remain among the last group. Your spouse shifts. The movement almost wakes you, but not quite. The second sleep holds. For a little longer, the entire household exists between night and morning. The room is still dark, though darkness has begun thinning around the shutter edges. Not light exactly, only the suggestion that light will eventually return. Beneath the hearth ash, several embers survive. This matters more than their appearance suggests. When you wake properly, you will uncover them. A little tinder, a little breath, a twig, then flame. The fire will begin again without the trouble of borrowing a live coal from a neighbour. Some swear that allowing the household hearth to die through carelessness brings bad luck. Others simply know that relighting it with numb fingers is irritating. As with so many medieval beliefs, practical wisdom and superstition often wear the same cloak. The grain waits along the wall. The 3 onions from your neighbour remain on the table. The broken leather strap lies beside the mending basket, promised for repair. The smith's payment waits in the locked chest. The undecided coin waits there too, still unwilling to choose between grain and roof. Tomorrow has not forgotten any of these things. It is merely polite enough not to mention them yet. Your spouse wakes first. You feel the mattress move slightly. No words. A hand reaches out from beneath the blanket, touches the air, then retreats immediately. Cold. The morning has made its argument. Your spouse stays under the wool. You remain asleep. Outside, the dog hears something. His ears rise. A cart begins somewhere farther down the lane. Not the broken one. This wheel turns quietly. Hooves strike hardened mud. A wooden door opens. A bucket handle knocks against a wall. The village is beginning to return. Slowly. No sudden burst of activity. No trumpet. No herald announcing that everyone must now participate in another medieval day. Just one sound, then another. The ordinary resurrection of work. A cock crows from a neighbouring yard. Then another answers farther away. The second appears to disagree with the first about the exact time. No one can quite agree whether roosters mark dawn accurately or simply enjoy making declarations before anyone can challenge them. You wake at last. Not fully. Your eyes open into grey darkness. For a moment, you do not know whether the bell belongs to a dream. Then the monastery sounds again. You understand. Morning is close. You feel the familiar straw beneath you, the lumpy pillow, the heavy wool blanket, and the warmth of your spouse beside you. The room slowly returns in shapes. The stool, the little pilgrim badge, the iron key, the extinguished candle, the cross near the hearth, the locked chest. Everything is exactly where the night left it. You listen to your spouse breathing. Neither of you rises. Not yet. There is a rare sweetness in these final moments before obligation returns. Soon there will be water to fetch, the fire to wake, bread to divide, the neighbour's strap to repair, a trip toward market perhaps, the roof to inspect, the smith to pay, the muddy road to face again once frost loosens beneath daylight. But all of that belongs to the world outside the blanket. For now, you pull the wool slightly higher. Your spouse does the same. The dog lowers his head again near the hearth. The second sleep has ended, but the household has not yet surrendered entirely to mourning. You lie still while the darkness turns slowly grey. The bells continue over the fields, and after one long, ordinary, deeply human medieval evening, you discover that the greatest luxury in the house may be nothing more complicated than staying warm for one more minute beside someone familiar. The bells grow softer now, or perhaps you're simply listening less carefully. The room remains dim, held between the fading night and the pale beginning of morning. You let your eyes close again, not to sleep deeply this time, but only to rest beneath the weight of the wool. The hearth waits beneath its blanket of ash. The oak door stays barred. The herbs near the bed are still. Outside, frost lies quietly over the road where your muddy footprints have already begun to disappear. Nothing needs to hurry. The market can wait. The roof can wait. The smith and his coin can wait. Even the neighbour's broken strap can remain beside the mending basket a little longer. For these few gentle moments, the medieval world becomes very small. There is only the bed, the warmth beside you, the faint smell of rosemary and smoke, A dog breathing near the dying fire. A distant bell crossing fields you no longer need to see. Your hands are no longer cold. Your boots are somewhere beyond the blanket, but they belong to morning. The road belongs to morning too. Tonight has already carried you through rain, hearthlight, supper, quiet work, whispered prayers, old charms, flickering candles, shared worries, first sleep, midnight embers, and back again into warmth. Now all those details soften. The onions on the table fade into shadow. The pilgrim road disappears beneath mist. The watchfire beyond the fields becomes a single dull star and then nothing at all. The stone monastery grows quiet in your imagination. The village roofs sink gently beneath darkness, and the house around you seems to breathe once, slowly, before becoming still. You are warm. The door is closed. The night has passed safely. There is nowhere else you need to go, so remain here for another breath, and another, while the last medieval bell fades far beyond the fields, the embers dim beneath the ash, and the whole little household slips softly into quiet.